That what accounts for this really strange paradox of Lincoln, who's almost universally regarded as like the greatest natural-born politician to ever become president in the United States. Why, in just a couple weeks before his reelection, he's convinced that he's doomed, that he's not going to take it? Is it just
Lincoln is the greatest politician in retrospect?
Yeah.
Right?
No one thought exactly. People didn't seem to feel that way in August 1864.
A lot of them didn't feel that way even before. Lincoln was subjected to immense criticism. Lincoln was subjected to criticism in Congress. Lincoln was subjected to ridicule and denunciation in the press. Our political discourse today has sunk to a fairly low level, but it was pretty low at that time, too. Some of the things you read in the press at that time about Lincoln or about the Democrats were scurrilous, were outrageous, were completely, antithetical to fact, but nonetheless, they spread all over the place. Lincoln thought he was going to lose because the North was war-weary, because all of Grant's strategy had not achieved victory against Lee. And people felt these tens of thousands of casualties in the spring and summer of 1864 had accomplished nothing. Of course, it didn't work out that way. What would have happened if McClellan had won? Who knows? We can't really put out a scenario, but Lincoln thought it might mean that emancipation would be rescinded. And he tried to act on that assumption. But so Lincoln was a great man and a great politician, but he was not infallible by any stretch of the imagination. Nobody is.
So why do you think that sort of sense of how contentious and criticized Lincoln was as president, where does that get lost along the way?
Getting assassinated helps considerably in that regard. And in fact, when Lincoln is shot, in the aftermath of that, you have newspapers like let's say the New York World, the major New York Democratic Party newspaper of the North, in effect apologizing for all the criticism. They had lambasted Lincoln for 4 years. They had ridiculed his speeches. They had denounced him. Once he's assassinated, they say, we really were out of line here, and we went way too far, and this was a great man, and et cetera, et cetera. And I think if Lincoln had lived out his second term and had retired peaceably, like George W. Bush, maybe gone into painting or something, I don't know how his reputation would. Of course, winning the war doesn't hurt your reputation.
When you get assassinated at the peak of your accomplishments.
Right. It was like FDR dying, not assassinated, right at just before the end of World War II. FDR would have had to face the Cold War or the beginnings of the Cold War. Lincoln would have had to face Reconstruction. Maybe they would have been defeated by those challenges, and they would have ended up looking. Victory doesn't always win. Look at George Bush the first. The first Iraq War, his popularity was 90% when that less than 2 years later, he's voted out of office. People can be very fickle, I guess.
Yeah, or think of like LBJ in 64, right? 60+%, and then in one election, then being drummed out by the next.